Well, welcome everybody to Vault Hours. My name is Ryan Louisbrand, and I am co-hosting with Casey. Casey, do you want to go ahead and get us started here?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jump into some things, I do want to highlight we're getting pretty close to Halloween, so I figured I'd show up to this edition of Vault Hours in a little bit of a costume. So I'm a Magic 8 Ball. Kind of hard to see in the little bit, our little pictures in the corner of the screen, but thought I'd call that out. I'd also like to welcome our special guest, Larry Magid. He's the CEO of ConnectSafely.org and has a ton of experience as a tech journalist. Welcome, Larry.
Welcome. And since you're the magic 8 ball, can I ask, is my network secure? Can I shake the 8 ball and get the answer?
Yeah, I think it is.
Wow, that's
Try
easy.
again later.
I'm done then. See you guys later.
Great. Cool. And we have definitely a stacked agenda for today. First, we're going to be touching on Cybersecurity Awareness Month and then handing it off to Larry to talk about online safety. And then Ryan's going to walk us through a little October release update. First, before we jump into some of those content, I would like to highlight that this is a collaborative session. So if you ever have a question or comment you'd like to ask live, just note so in the chat and we'll make sure to promote you to the screen. You can also ask questions in the chat or in the questions pane throughout, and we'll make sure to get through those throughout the session. Um, with that, we can look at some initial
Speaking of, we have some.
questions.
Yeah, let's take a look here. I see Don's been helping answer some of these already. That's great. Let's go ahead and read some of these out. Question: Do you think there might be a way to integrate biometric login directly to the extension without having to rely on the desktop app? Saying it should be possible because websites do enable it. It depends on the browser and the website. I know that there is some technical challenges along with that, and as Don points out, DW points out in the answer here that Google's Manifest v3 code for extensions are coming soon, which will enable some new features. So we're working on that. So stay tuned for anything on that front. Will gift and code subscriptions be available this holiday season? It's something we've been looking into for a little bit, but it's still under future initiatives, as DW mentioned there. Um, I don't know. I would just send my family a check for $10 with 4 Bitwarden written on it. It's might be the faster solution in this case. Casey, why don't you take this last one?
Yeah. So last question asks, is there any updates on upcoming Bitwarden DevOps features, such as being able to integrate and use SSH keys? So we're currently have a wait list for the Secrets Manager beta. DW put a link in here to sign up. So absolutely, if you're interested in that topic, we'd recommend checking that out.
Mm.
Um,
It reminds me
looks
though, something interesting about SSH keys is that Bitwarden's custom fields supports filling out the character requirements for SSH keys, so you could still use them in the current Bitwarden using the custom fields feature, but not to full integration levels.
Looks like our last question is that someone's having problems with an Android and launching Bitwarden through that. We can put our support link in the chat, and that might be a good place to go for that. Let me
All
get
right,
that
if
for
anyone
you.
has any questions anytime, just go ahead and drop them in, and we'll take a break from whatever we're talking about to address those. So let's just we'll move on. So let's talk about our first topic. Go ahead, Casey, take it away.
Beautiful. So, our first topic is about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Many of you might know that October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it might seem a little silly talking about this at the end of the month, but I thought I'd bring up some of the interesting content and information that was shared during this celebration of sorts. So, for those who might not know, Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a collaborative effort between both the United States government and industry leaders like Bitwarden, specifically led by Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, NCA. The theme for this year is See Yourself in Cyber. So, this is meant to demonstrate that while cybersecurity may seem like a really complex topic, it's really about people informing healthy cybersecurity habits. The NCA and CISA also provided a couple recommendations under this theme. First, for individuals and family, to see yourself taking action to stay safe online. So, this is really the basics, right? This may be updating your software regularly, thinking before you click, being aware of phishing attempts, maybe using strong passwords and multi factor authentication. So, this is probably not news to anyone on this call, but for those who have friends or family outside of the cybersecurity community, these are really great first steps to lay the groundwork for good cybersecurity hygiene. Next is seeing yourself join the cyber workforce, and that might seem a little biased coming from us, but hear me out. Um, the cybersecurity industry is ever growing, and it's really important to build an industry that is more diverse and dedicated to solving problems that will keep people safe online. So, specifically, if you're interested in joining the cyber workforce with Bitwarden, my colleague Don will be sharing some more information on Bitwarden careers towards the end of vault hours. Lastly, for those who are already in the cyber workforce, which I'm assuming is a lot of people on this call, see yourself as part of the solution. So, this means working to reduce risk and build solutions within critical infrastructure and systems that people rely on every day, right? So, you're part of the bigger solution. This can be small, like implementing a new way of communicating with other team members, or maybe something a little larger, like opting for third party pen testing, more regular testing there. And these really just all add up to be really influential on the safety of others online. Ryan, you can move on to the next slide there. So, um, Cybersecurity Awareness Month also put out some really quick 4 actions to be safer online. These, like I said, are probably not news to anyone on this call, but like any sport you might be learning or maybe a new art style, it's really important to go back to the basics sometimes and remind yourself of what's really important. So first, think before you click, recognize and report phishing. If a link looks suspicious, don't click it. If you're using a work account, maybe report it to the IT department. Update your software. Pretty simple. If you can, use automatic updates. And use strong passwords. We talk about passwords a lot at Bitwarden. Use passwords that are strong and unique and randomly generated. If you can, use a password manager. Lastly is enabling multi-factor authentication. We know that that's not perfect, but it does act as a second layer of security, and sometimes a password just isn't enough. So hopefully revisiting these basics might jog your memory and help you, rethink your current cybersecurity strategy. Great, and with that...
There we go. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Yeah.
No, go ahead and introduce Larry and bring him on up.
Beautiful. Cool. So I'd like to introduce Larry to talk about online safety. Larry, take it away.
Thank you so much. We're going to show my slides here.
There you are.
First of all, just as a way of introduction, I'm Larry Magid, CEO of Connect Safely. We're a nonprofit organization based in Silicon Valley that has been operating for 15 years, educating consumers about internet safety. We began during the early days of social media to help parents understand how their teens are using social media. We now have resources, everything from extremely young children, basically, I think we call it Tots with Tech, all the way up to our safety guide for seniors. And we work with all aspects of online safety, and security is probably our biggest bucket in terms of the amount of resources we have. We have guides to security, guides to passwords, special guides for seniors and security. So we do think a lot. So all of those suggestions you made, without security, you don't have privacy or safety. So that's very important. In terms of online security and whose business it is, it really literally is everyone's. Obviously, government is playing a role. You've already mentioned CISA. There is a big role for government to play, both as a consumer of better security and better safety, as an advocate for better security and better safety, and sometimes to the chagrin of people in the technology industry, as a regulator. And as you know, there is increasing conversations going on about regulations of social media, some of which I might agree with, some of which I might not agree with. But it's important that government at least put some thought into this, and to put some good thought in the sense of not knee-jerk reactions, understanding the unintended consequences of well-meaning legislation, but at the same time thinking about what it means to protect the public when it comes to all aspects of safety and security, especially in youth safety. So there are many, many bills that are being considered at the mostly state and federal level that are being discussed, as well as some that are passed recently. Businesses obviously need to take safety seriously, again, in terms of their own internal operations, but also in terms of their customers. So protecting their internal data, protecting their customers' data, and educating their customers, and especially in the case of social media, when there's any kind of user-generated content, to make sure that despite the best intentions of the platform provider, the platform is being used safely by people who are using it, which not only protects the people themselves, but in some cases can protect the platform. There certainly have been cases where users have done things that have actually jeopardized the platform itself. I'm going to add one more. I'm just didn't slip in here. I meant to put this in, but law enforcement obviously has a very special role in cybersecurity. And clearly at the federal level, we do have agencies that seem to do a pretty good job, or at least are very knowledgeable when it comes to cybersecurity. Obviously, the FBI and CISA and other organizations, but it needs to filter down to the local level. I don't expect every police department in America to have experts on hand to really help everybody, recover from a phishing attack or solve all of their cybersecurity problems. But I do expect them to be at least somewhat knowledgeable in terms of resources and where to send people. And I would also like to see them part of an education program so that they're providing good education to the citizens in their communities. Schools and universities, of course, have a very important role, again, to protect their own networks, but also to educate the students in terms of how to manage their own cybersecurity and safety, not only on campus or using campus resources, but in all of their lives. And we're beginning to see an increasing amount of online safety education happening in the schools during the post-pandemic period, when curriculums are being tightened up and classroom time is even more precious than ever. We sometimes worry about it being cut back, but it's something that we at Connect Safely take very seriously. We don't have a curriculum in the same sense that Common Sense Media does and other organizations, but we do operate we are the U.S. hosts of Safer Internet Day. So come February, for the second week in February, we're going to be launching a national program in schools all across the country to get them to have educational programs in the schools. And you are the first to hear about it because we haven't publicly announced it yet, but we're about to launch a grant program. So if you know educators in your area, teachers who would be interested in teaching a segment or teaching us a little bit about online safety during the second week of February, we can offer up to $1,500 to incentivize them and provide them with the money that they need to put that together if they do, as well as all of the resources they need, videos, guides, tip sheets, questions, curriculum, to make that happen. So I'm very pleased to be able to announce that. We're going to have the application up next week, but anybody who wants to get in touch with me at larry@connectsafely.org, I can kind of give you a preview of what we're doing, and then make sure that next week you get notified when the applications are available. So we're very excited about, and we want to see a lot of applications, and we hope to have a number of schools across the country funded to do these programs. And then finally, in terms of who's responsible, is families, everyone. I remember, I think it might have been in the Bush administration, but this is hopefully one area where it really doesn't matter whether a Democrat or Republican or whoever is in charge. I saw a very insightful comment coming out of, I believe it was the White House, where they talked about how everybody in America is responsible for the cybersecurity of our entire national infrastructure. And at first I said, oh, that's hyperbole. But then I realized that anytime, for example, there's a denial of service attack, it's often a distributed denial of service attack. So that means if my network, if my home network, if my PC, if my phone is insecure, that can have an impact on the entire national infrastructure. Now that seems odd. Gosh, you mean little Larry sitting there in Palo Alto using his laptop is somehow going to jeopardize national security? Well, if my laptop is vulnerable and a bots take over and it becomes a node on a denial of service attack botnet, then yes, I am helping to impede national security, or I'm harming national security. Again, I don't mean to overstress it, but I think it's important that everybody understands that just like with public health, if I have a cold or I have a COVID infection, it's my responsibility not to spread that. And of course, it would be helpful if I were properly vaccinated and never got that infection in the first place. And I think that same message that we have around public health needs to be passed on for security as well. So that's one of the areas where I think where families and individuals can play a role, and of course, protecting themselves as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. Do we have another slide? Yeah, there we go. So getting back, pretty much this is similar to what we talked about before. We need to educate employees, customers, and general public. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Connect Safely is one of several organizations that have resources that are available. We actually do allow for co-branding of our materials. We allow distribution of our materials. We allow for linking and in some cases reposting of our materials. We really want to get the word out as broadly as possible. It's not about us getting any credit. It's about us helping to broaden the education. So if you want to do a campaign and need the resource to do it, please feel free to call on us. We're more than happy to work with you. Next slide.
Sorry, there's a delay on the slides as they come through.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think about, I'm going to go with the last bullet point first, that if car companies were like tech companies, airbags and seatbelts would wait until Gen 2. We try to work with startups, and too often a company will come to us to kind of lock the barn door after the horse is stolen. They've had some kind of tragedy. It often is literally a tragedy. This can be a life and death issue when it comes to online safety. And so we hear from them that something terrible has happened to one or more of their users. What should we do to make our network safer? Well, it would have been good if you thought about that at the very beginning. It would have been good if the venture capitalist that gave you your initial funding had given some thought to that before they gave you the money. So it really needs to be built in, baked in at every aspect of the company. It needs to be reinforced by the CEO and the CTO and everybody in the C-suite. And it needs to be something that everybody in the company takes seriously. I'm talking everything from not putting your password on a sticky note on your laptop or on your screen, which still happens, to just understanding phishing attacks, to everything that you need to know as an employee of a company to keep your network safe, to keep your colleagues safe, and of course, to keep your customers safe. So I'm not sure if I have any more slides. Do I have one or two more?
You got one more, yeah.
One more. So this is kind of redundant with what you had talked about earlier, and it's just some of the material that we talk about. It's just a thing. So I don't even need to read this off. You all know about all of these and all of these issues. It's a little more extensive than the bullet points you had. So I do want to kind of go over the ones that were not necessarily focused by your thing. The impulse control is very important. Understanding when I'm angry and upset, I send an email to myself, and then I wait till the next morning before I pass it on to whoever it's aimed at. And 9 times out of 10, I don't pass it on, because what I needed to do is vent and not really troll. We all have emotional reactions, so it's important to do that. It's also important to protect not only our own data, but also our own reputation. So thinking through, again, what you post, everything from violating company policies around harassment or sexual harassment electronically as well as in person, to just making sure that you're behaving in a way that you can feel proud of. That doesn't mean you can't use technology, whether it's your Slack channel or your social media channel, to disagree and enter into spirited discussions, but in a way that's respectful, in a way that reflects well on you and on your colleagues. And then, of course, we all have an obligation not to pass on misinformation. There is so much misinformation that circulates not only on the internet, but sometimes I've seen it or heard about it within company discussion forums, within Slack channels, rumors, unsubstantiated information. Be really careful, because if you pass on something that is false, you are in a sense lying. I mean, you don't mean to lie. It's misinformation, not disinformation. It's not malicious on your part, but nevertheless, you're passing on false information. And that affects not only the people who receive it, but it impacts your reputation. And if it gets out and it's associated with your company, it impacts your company's reputation. So I'm a real stickler. You don't have to, be a seasoned journalist and do extensive research, but at least be reasonably certain that what you're passing on is true before you pass it on. There is so much more. This conversation could literally go on for hours, but I wanted to give you a brief overview in terms of the kinds of things that we can do at Connect Safely and the kinds of things that we all need to look out for as we, I guess, now look back on Cybersecurity Month, or maybe celebrate it through Halloween. And don't get spooked out. Be as safe as you can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Larry. I had a question for you.
Sure.
Something you brought up, which I thought was interesting, was local law enforcement
Yeah.
and how it's a responsibility for them. Is there anything that we can do as citizens to help prepare, like
Yeah.
to help encourage local law enforcement to be ready for
I
stuff
think
like
you
this?
can. I think you can get in touch with whether if you have a police commissioner, or chief of police, or community services people. Most police departments have, depending on the size of your community, they may have some liaison officers. They're people, and we most of us don't encounter them until we wind up running a stoplight. But for the most part, my experience with law enforcement has been really pleasant. I know they're I'm very much aware of the controversies around them, and I know that's also true. But have a meeting with them and say, what are you doing? And if you have resources, and I know many of you do have extensive resources, offer them. Offer yourself up as a speaker, for example, at community events. Offer yourself up as an advisor. If there is a police commission, maybe you should run for it and be on it. I bet you there aren't too many cybersecurity experts on your police commission. So, again, depending on the size of your town, they may or may not have resources, but I think we can all help. And I live in Palo Alto, which is a relatively small town of 65,000. And it's been a while, and maybe I'm reminding myself I should do a follow-up meeting, but I have had that conversation. And again, I don't expect every cop on the beat to be a cybersecurity expert, but I do expect somebody in the department to have be aware of the resources and the places they can send someone when they come in. And I would like to see at least educational materials in the hands of every police department. Well, I suspect everybody here has a pretty good knowledge base already. So again, anything, we don't claim to be any smarter than anybody in the room, but we do spend a lot of time developing materials. So anything we can do to help, we're more than happy to.
All
That's
right.
great.
So
Yeah,
if it
thank you so much for that information. And I think that this is all information that a lot of people might have already kind of known in the back of their heads, but it's a great reminder and kind of reminds people that they have the power to make changes in their local environments. So thank you so much for that. I
I'm going to
think,
put something in the chat if I can,
mhm.
safecode.org/. This is a document which we don't actually have links to, right? Because it's brand new. It's connectsafely.org/manage risks. Oh, good.
measures,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you go through that, it lists every risk you could imagine, including all the security risks with links to resources on how to address them. So that's something you might want to take a look at.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, if anyone has any other questions, always ask them as we continue on the session. And Ryan, I think that you have some information on the October release as well.
That's right. So yeah, again, if anyone has any questions for Larry, Larry, I'm gonna go ahead and drop you back to the audience. But if anyone has any questions, we'll bring you back on up. Um, yeah, because we're limited to how many people we can have on stage at once. Okay. So looking at the October release and the topic for this, we a couple weeks ago now, as now we're at the end of the month, we did release some new features in October. The big one for us that I was really excited to announce was the password protected encrypted export. There's been a lot of talk in the community of how the best way is to back up your vault, and Bitwarden before allowed you to do unencrypted backup or a backup that was encrypted using your account specific encryption key, which is useful for account specific backups. But if you were to move it into a different account, it wouldn't be able to be read. So now you can send out an encrypted export using a password of your choice, aka an encryption key of your choice, that can then be imported into any Bitwarden account. So incredibly useful for making sure all your passwords are backed up. Just do note that it doesn't handle yet file attachments, but it's still a really great solution for making sure that you don't have unencrypted data just floating around by accident because you forgot to delete the file after you had a backup. All right, so mobile username generator. This has finally come to Android and iOS. So we had a username generator in the last couple of months. We've launched one on the Web Vault and the Vault extensions, but now we finally have it over on the mobile apps, which are fantastic. And also inside of that, you'll have email alias that you can generate as well. On mobile, we only have the original three supported that we initially launched with, which was Firefox Relay, Anonaddy, and Simple Login. And we also added Fastmail to our other clients and also added DuckDuckGo just recently. So now you can create an email alias through DuckDuckGo and their service. And very soon, you may have seen an announcement about this. DuckDuckGo has released their own browser, which is really neat. It's available right now in open beta on Mac only. And Bitwarden is going to be, when they enable it on their side, I understand it'll be in the next few weeks, Bitwarden will be integrated directly into their browser as a autofill password provider. So let's take a look. I think I had a question come in. Do you have any comment on the unencrypted temp file that appears in the download folder when trying to export the password protected file? Peter, I believe I've seen that issue talked about in our internal channels, and the team is looking at it. I don't know exactly when or what a solution to that looks like, so I don't really have any comment on it. Just that the team has been made aware. I don't know if it was your report actually that made its way across our desk. Question from Robert in our Q&A with the recent influx of capital. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Are there any plans to revisit design the core infrastructure design, specifically organization security level, which is listen. All right. This is getting security RSA 3072. I potentially we Bitwarden prefers to do everything industry standard, off the shelf type of thing. Like as we said before, don't reinvent the wheel. Having your it's much more secure to go with stuff that's already tried and true. Until there's a new industry standard that everyone picks up, in which we've already committed that when the new industry standard comes through, that we will go through and redo our back end. You have some pretty technically advanced questions here. Don, I'm sure you can take a look at that if you wanted to and help answer Robert's question. But basically, what I said, that we're pretty much holding the course until there's a new standard for everyone. And then, as part of this October update, some sharp eyes might have noticed something a little special in the mobile app, a new option to approve login requests. Some people also noticed this in the mobile app notes as well, the patch notes. And it's a fun feature that you can look for in the future. But basically, a lot of people have different definitions of passwordless, but we're looking at creating a passwordless experience. And that is if somebody were to log into a web vault from a recognized device. If you just go to vault.bitwarden.com and enter your username and then hit the login button, you can actually receive a push notification to your already logged in mobile app and approve that login request, and your web vault will be logged in automatically. So we're starting with Web Vault, and it's going to come out to it's going to come out to all of our other clients when we manage to have a little more dev time on it. But it's actually a pretty exciting thing. Will help help people from having to enter incredibly long, complex master passwords using the known devices. So that's a useful thing. You'll see some more of that coming up soon. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Casey, for the blog.
Great. Yeah, I'll run through some of the articles that have been published this month. First is our 2023 Passwords Decision Survey. So this is an annual survey that Bitwarden compiles. It's essentially reviewing IT decision makers and their purchasing decisions in terms of cybersecurity and password management. This year, we interviewed 800 IT decision makers for this survey. So some pretty interesting findings. First, about half of the decision makers interviewed, 49% said that they are either deploying or having plans to deploy passwordless technology. So something that has been been in the works for quite a while. And 84% of IT decision makers use password managers. While that is absolutely the majority, I'm a little surprised that it's only 84%. So definitely some interesting findings here. I'd recommend checking it out. Next is about the G2 Enterprise Grid Report, specifically for the password manager category. Bitwarden was named the leader in this category for fall 2022, and compared to other leaders in the industry, Bitwarden ranked the highest in customer satisfaction. I was pretty excited when I saw this report myself. And if you'd like to dig into the weeds of some of the data in this report, I'd recommend looking at it. Next is another one of our industry leader security rankings articles. So this one is specifically on personal email services. So we took the 5 most popular personal email services: Yahoo Mail, Gmail, Microsoft Outlook, iCloud, and AOL, and gave them rankings depending on their password security. So if you use any one of those personal email services, I'd recommend just taking a little peek at it, see how they stack up. Next is a case study with Green Loop IT Solutions. This is a managed service provider who uses Bitwarden to protect their clients' logins and sensitive information. So it kind of walks through the challenges that they experienced and the solutions that they came to with Bitwarden. If you're in that kind of space, I'd recommend looking at that. And then next is actually an article that I wrote, which talks a little bit more about that new backup option for encrypted vault exports using the password protection. Ryan talked on that a little bit earlier, so we don't need to dive too deep into this. But if you're interested in more information, this is definitely a great resource for you. It also has a ton of other resources for backing up your vault. So even if password protection doesn't seem to be something you're interested in, it's also a really good resource for other options. Next is an article about how long your password should be. It features a really handy password strength chart that details how long the password should be and how long it should take to crack your password based on length. It also gives some recommendations in terms of strengthening passwords outside of length because there's a lot of factors that go into that and kind of the math behind which passwords are strongest. And then lastly, we have an article, What is Bitwarden Autofill and How Do You Use It? It shows you step-by-step how to save a URI in a Bitwarden item to ensure easy autofilling when using the Bitwarden browser extension. So if you don't already have that enabled for you, I definitely recommend checking out this article. Like I said, it's step-by-step instructions, a ton of screenshots, so definitely a time saver. And next, I'll hand it off to the news feed.
All right. Well, before we get to that, we got a couple of questions showing up here in the Q&A. It looks like people are pretty interested in the passwordless feature. So let me look at the first one by A23. If you want to go for a passwordless feature, will you still have to enter a master password on a new device? As part for security and also to stop people from possibly getting 2FA bombed, yes. So the device has to be recognized by Bitwarden, meaning you have to have logged into it at least once before. And by that I also mean don't do it in private mode, because if you do it in private mode, you'll clear any data that's stored on your device to ensure that it's recognized. So if you've logged into it once before, you will be able to have this set up with the mobile approval. Next question. Can I still log in from any device if I activate approve login request on my mobile and then lose it or breaks down? Yes, you'd be able to, because you would still be able to always log in with your master password. So you're not going to be able to go, just take your master password and, burn up the piece of paper you've written it down on, or just throw it away or completely forget it. You're still going to need it as a backup for these sort of solutions. Does Chrome's extension manifest v3 negatively affect any Bitwarden features? If so, what's your plan with other browsers? I do know that the team has been working on MV3 for a little bit. I believe there was some work had to be done for autofill, but I think we've solved that one. But I don't have the exact technical details if anybody else might, we can bring that up. But I know that we plan to be ready for it, and there shouldn't be any detriment to Bitwarden features. All right, so let's go through the newsfeed, see what people have been saying about Bitwarden, Android Police, how to generate fake alias email addresses. I don't like to use the word fake; they're real email aliases, but it's a great way to stop spammers from reaching your inbox, and Bitwarden is central to this article, so pretty happy to have gotten the mention. Stay safe online, how to protect yourself and your devices from Metro. Hey, yeah, also Bitwarden, very central to that, so appreciate the call out that they've given us. This is an article, how to add an extra layer of protection in Bitwarden Vault items. It details going through and peppering your passwords if you wanted to. That is, like, you might have a few numbers or letters, like a small character string, that you keep in your head that you just add to your passwords after they get autofilled. It's for those who like have even a higher security profile than others at Technique. IT Pro, best free password managers. Bitwarden, of course, was listed in there. I'd like to say Bitwarden's probably also one of the best paid password managers too, but we believe in password security for everyone. Why I switched to Bitwarden for my password manager. Thanks a lot, PC World. I'm really happy that Bitwarden was able to usurp your primary password manager. So really happy about that. Nice to see this article come out and give us a bunch of praise. That's it. Let's see. Help. Does anybody? I guess this is a section where we ask if anyone has any technical questions. I saw one earlier about the new Android Pixel 6, and I believe we're just going to have you reach out to contact. Anyone have any additional questions or things that they need any help on? It's kind of a weird question, but come in the new year. Yeah, Don, I'll bring you on up. But come the new year, we're actually going to have a special session. We've been talking about it. Oh, how do I get DW up here? We're having thinking about having a special session in the new year to go over settings to help people with new devices they might have gotten in the holiday season. So we'll talk a little bit more about that then. But it'll be it should be a fun interactive time.
Thanks, Ryan. We can jump to the next slide. So one thing I just wanted to highlight is that we've had some recent enhancements to the Bitwarden help page. So if you haven't played around in there, it's a great time to check it out. Now when you type in the search bar, you're going to see recent searches that you may have done, popular searches by the community, and results as you type. You can also now filter by category. So if you type something in like autofill, you can pick if you want to see any related help material or blogs, even resources or FAQs. Next screen. And then for the community section, we have a couple updates here. Good notice here for any self-hosted users. Make sure to update your instance before November 16th. There's some changes with the API that are going on, and I will drop that link in the chat if you want to read more about it. So just make sure you update your instance. And then we can head to the next slide. And then a couple of great resources here. So one of them is David's link on, I'm going to copy this into the chat. It's a really expansive article on backing up your Bitwarden vault. So if you want to be part of the conversation or see some tips and tricks, definitely check it out. We also had a really fun Reddit post, which was about using Bitwarden in creative ways. So if you're on Reddit, check it out, join in the conversation. And then we also get these pop up every once in a while is how to fill credentials on sites where you have more than just the login and the username, so like a customer number. And Gary has actually blessed us with a fantastic article, which is really useful for travel sites and the like. And then we'll go to the next slide. And if you are interested in getting involved in the community, we have a ton of ways that you can do that. So head over to bitwarden.com/get-involved. Everything from contributing to the actual code base, helping translate. Bitwarden is available in over 50 languages. Get involved in the feature requests, vote, discuss, ask your questions to the Bitwarden community. We even have a mobile beta program, which the new beta should be available shortly. We have a couple surveys up for participating in user research, or even just attending events like this. And then next slide. And if you want to take your involvement to the next level, as Casey mentioned, head to bitwarden.com/careers. Just a shout out to a couple that we have on there right now in the engineering team, as well as the sales team, and even territory managers in Austria, Switzerland, and Italy. So for the global audience, we're looking at you, and if you don't see a posting that matches your description, it's popping.
Yeah, you're getting a little buzz. I don't know if it's just if it's you or if it's
Is that any better?
no.
That's weird.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's almost worse.
Okay.
Yeah, you started off strong, but yeah, it's okay. We can still understand what you're saying.
I recorded it before. Sorry, everyone. I'll just try and wrap up this section real quick here. Or Ryan, do you want to take over the event section? And I'll just
Yeah, I can talk about. So our events, we always have our live weekly demo. You could join it. It's every Wednesday at noon Eastern. If you're a MSP, a managed service provider, we have a demo that we host regularly that specifically goes over some of the MSP features. That's happening on November 17th. And then the big one, Open Source Security Summit. Casey, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so that's upcoming in December. We have a lot of great headliners for this. So multiple panels, interviews, and just other presentations in terms of leaders in the cybersecurity industry. Absolutely recommend checking out that link there. I'll pop it in the chat for a complete list of all of our speakers. And speakers are being added regularly as we're getting ready for this event. So check it back regularly if you want to see the most up-to-date speaker list. I'll be there, so I'll be excited to see everyone else join. Beautiful. And then one more thing, I think someone hinted in the chat earlier, but we typically end these Vault Hour sessions with a little Bitwarden store giveaway. So even though Gary is no longer a host of Vault Hours, I promise you the free swag is not going away. Looking through some of the swag that you can win, I personally have the Bitwarden beanie. I wore it to a recent trip in Iceland, kept my ears super toasty warm. So I'd recommend checking that out if you win this giveaway. So to enter, visit bitwarden.com/shop and fill out the contact form there. In the comment section, just say you heard about the giveaway during Vault Hours 29, and you must submit this form within 24 hours of the session to be eligible. And you'll be notified via email if you won. Quick reminder, you cannot win multiple times. We're trying to give everyone a chance to win something fun, but I'd recommend filling that out. With that, see, we can move on to questions and answers. I'm not quite sure if any other questions have come in.
There's one that I missed earlier. I think it got uploaded as I was going down the list. Will Bitwarden be able to be a provider for FIDO2 passwordless-based authentication, such as using Bitwarden to log into Google? We've seen internally, and keep this quiet, we've seen a proof of concept of this working, but it requires some weird browser workarounds. But it is something we're actively investigating. I know that there's going to be a lot of demand for third-party passkey managers since nobody wants to get locked into Microsoft's, Apple's, or Google's solution. So stay tuned. We're actively involved in the FIDO2 Alliance. And I think there actually was just a conference this last weekend that we had one of our product managers attending and representing us. So there will be some more updates on this. It's still in infancy, but we should hopefully have something cool to look at here in the next year.
Looks like there's another question that came in the chat about the overlay pop-up interface and if that's still in the works.
Hi, Reese. So you've been asking us this question now for almost a year, I think, since I've started working here, and the answer to this is still no. We haven't planned anything to get started on that yet. As I said, the team it causes fights when people talk about it internally, and we have other high priority projects to work on. Any questions from anyone else? Happy to any questions for Larry? I'm really impressed by the grant, the $1,500 grant. So I know someone who's a kindergarten teacher. It might be too early to start talking about cybersecurity in kindergarten. May not be, but I'll still pass the information along. Casey, let's talk a little bit about what our plan is for our next Vault Hours.
Yes. So our next vault hours is going to be slightly different because of all the holidays. It's kind of hard to find a vault hour session that fits our normal schedule and still would make sense for a lot of the people attending. So we've decided to do a holiday version of vault hours where we're going to be combining both the November and December session together. I'm just going to double check the date that we decided here, but I believe it is December 2nd will be our next fall hours. So if you next November or this coming November, if it's the last Friday of the month and you don't see any vault hours, you haven't missed anything. We're just combining the two sessions.
Yep, and shortly after this call, we're going to get the registration link set up for that. Also, keep an eye out on our social media to announce it as well. So that should be where you'd find all that information. Well, thank you very much to our special guest, Larry, for joining us today. And I will play us off with a little bit of music. I'll get some going again. If anybody has any questions, I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes. Just drop them in chat. I'll answer them, and we should be good to go. So everyone have a fantastic weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks everyone for attending.